Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today, my guest is Julia Jules. She's a professional dominatrix and a BDSM and sex coach. Today, we delve into all things regarding Julia's trade, including is being kinky a sign of a red flag, and could BDSM be healing for those with trauma? We also delve into a long discussion around libido as it relates to masculinity, what exactly is toxic masculinity, and why someone might look to participate in BDSM. We also talk about the legality of being a dominatrix, threesomes, and also Julia's favorite safe word. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. It was very informative for me. It gave me a shone a light into a world that I do not understand, or at least I didn't understand. So I hope you enjoy this one just as much as I did. I thought we'd start by asking, what are the biggest misconceptions when it comes to your trade, and maybe tell the listeners what your trade is as well.
Okay. Yeah. So I am a professional dominatrix, and I'm also a sexuality coach specializing in helping people who are new to kink and BDSM, people who are interested in it, get started, get the right information, learn how to play safe, learn how to communicate their boundaries, learn how to vet partners. There's a lot that goes into it. So that's what I do. A lot of, I think the top 3 misconceptions, there could be more, but we'll start there, are that people who engage in kink and BDSM are acting out their trauma, are mentally ill, or it's really abusive. The dominant is being abusive to their submissive. And while all of those things could be true, if somebody isn't engaging in it in a healthy way, in a safe way, in a proper way, by and large, people who are engaging in it safely are not, none of those things are true. Now, if you take a room full of 100 people, certainly, someone is going to be struggling with mental illness, perhaps, and also engages in BDSM. Does that mean that their engagement in BDSM is motivated by whatever mental health issues they might be challenged by? Maybe, maybe not. All of the research that I have read and people that I have met over the years, I would say that that's not true, that it's not motivated by mental health or, some sort of wiring gone wrong in their mind or some sort of deviance. I would say that's not true.
So it's the correlation is not causation sort of approach in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And why do you think that is a common misconception? Why do you think people would come to that?
Two big reasons that come to mind are, at least in the West, we still live in a pretty sex negative culture. Sex is supposed to be within the boundaries of a monogamous hetero relationship, and with the intention that they could have a child. That's the whole reason for sex. When we start talking about pleasure, I think a lot of people get really uncomfortable. And when we talk about pleasure in ways that are not commonly seen or commonly known about, then people get real uncomfortable. That's one. And then the other is that the roots of what we now call BDSM kind of stem from the psychological community going back to like the mid 1800s in, I believe it's Germany. I'll have to check that to make sure, but where we get the words sadism and masochism from. were actually first printed in a book called The Psychopathus Sexualis. And that was written by a guy named Richard Kraft von Ebbing. And he was a psychologist, psychiatrist. He was in the medical community. And he wrote this book as a way for the medical community and the legal community to diagnose pathological behavior. And where we get sadism and masochism from is, like, at the time, there was a guy, his name is Marquis de Sade, and he wrote books about getting sexual pleasure from inflicting pain on people. And he actually went to prison for some of the things that he did. So there is pathology to what he did, but actually tying his name to those practices that were non-consensual and criminal, that's where the pathology started. So that's, to me, kind of understandable. But then when we talk about masochism, we get that word from a guy, Leopold von Sacher-Masoch, I believe I'm getting his name correct. And he was just a guy, he was this rich kind of nobleman who enjoyed being bossed around by women wearing fur coats. He wrote a book called Venus in Furs. And so he was this really wealthy guy, and he would have his mistress who was not at the same economic status as him, but he would ride in the part of the train where, you know, kind of poorer people would sit, and then he would pay for her to ride first class in a fur coat and kind of like boss him around and you know, beat him up sometimes, but like more spanking, as far as I can from what I understand. But there was nothing pathological about that. There was nothing non-consensual about that. It was just two people engaging in something that we might consider non-normative. But so they were riders at the time. And then Richard Kraft von Ebbing came along, and he was reading these, and he, you know, put these names in his book, which became kind of a reference guide for psychology and the medical community. So fast forward a little bit, then we have Sigmund Freud in the early 1900s. He coined the term sadomasochism. He just kind of like squished them together and made it pathological. And so, you know, that was only 100 years ago. And, you know, we're still dealing with kind of understanding and unpacking kind of, you know, alternative, or I don't like the word normal, but, you know, for lack of a better word, non-normative or non-mainstream sexual practices. Yeah. So I think all of that kind of feeds into the fear or the pathology of it, or these kind of assumptions that people are acting out from a, you know, some sort of deviance or something, you know, gone wrong in their childhood around childhood trauma or something like that. So I can understand why people would think that or assume that. However, I will say some of the research that I have read and in my own experience, that when people bring intention and consciousness to maybe recreating a scene that could be similar to some traumatic event that they have experienced, by having control of the outcome of the session, being able to stop it at any time with a safe word, that can actually help people heal from a traumatic experience. And as the dominant, my role is as a protector of the person who might be wanting to reenact something or, you know, have a session. And so it can be very healing for me as well to step into a role as a protector for someone. So I think we're really just starting to, as a society, open up and understand how healing, it doesn't have to be healing, but if somebody wanted to engage in kink and BDSM with the intention of healing, that can certainly be done and be very helpful.
How often do you find that clients want to go down that particular route in terms of the healing path?
My own personal experience is not very often, but part of the reason that I became a coach is because I could see that potential. And that's really where I wanted to go with people. Maybe not even recreating a scene all the time, but just having the proper education and information for people to let go of some of the guilt and shame that they have for even wanting to participate in kink and BDSM.
Would you mind talking me through like how something like that practically like works, and are there like what are the risks? Because obviously there is the positive side, but are there any risks to like potentially like opening Pandora's box
Sure.
with
Yeah.
that sort of thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you mean like how
Because
I would set up a session, or?
yeah, just like practically, I mean, yeah, just if someone says, "Oh, I want," did they say, "I've got this thing that I want to get over," a horrible experience, I want to, how does that work? And then how do you approach setting it up so that they're, safe and all the rest of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So anytime I'm going to have a session with someone, they have to fill out a short application from my website. And then from there, I can get a feel for their intentions and if there's somebody that I want to have a session with. So let's just assume that they checked all those boxes and we're now, um, about to start a session together. So I would want to know, well, sorry, let me back up a little bit. If someone came to me and said, these are the things I'm dealing with, I want to kind of process this trauma that I experienced. This is what it was about. First of all, like I would make sure that I feel like I'm equipped to handle whatever might come up. If it's out of my wheelhouse, I'm perfectly fine saying like, I don't think I'm the person to walk you through this or create this session with you. I would also check and see what kind of other support they have. Are they seeing a therapist that is kink informed and understands BDSM, and, that they have support outside of our session? Are they taking any psychiatric medication? I want to make sure that they are as sound in mind and body as they can be, and that they're going to have support afterwards. And I would make myself available for aftercare, which is pretty normal within BDSM, to make sure that they're taken care of. So in starting the session, I would want to know what kind of emotional state they're in when we start, what kind of emotional and psychological state they're in, kind of generally, and what they want to experience. Like if all things go perfectly, you have a magic wand, what is the outcome of our session? Just to really get a sense of where they want to go with it. And then, of course, we always establish safe words. And throughout the session, I'm paying attention to their energy, and just like watching very closely their nonverbal signals. Because one thing also that can be common is that submissives don't necessarily want to call the safe word because they feel like it's disappointing their dominance. That can be, not always, but that can be a dynamic that happens. So especially in a session where someone is wanting to work something out and paying very close attention to their body language and their energy. So, so let's say we do the session, everything's good. Maybe they didn't call the safe word. Then after that session, we talk about how it went. How was that for you? Anything that you want to share? Depending on the intensity of it, like people can have snacks, people can like curl up in a blanket. Yeah. So, and then I would be available for days afterward too, because it can be so within a session, so there's something called subspace and top space, which refers to like an altered state of consciousness that can occur in a session. And that can be a very transcendental experience sometimes, or just kind of like a natural high. And so you have all these endorphins going, and then that might last for a couple days. And then there's what's called like a sub drop or top drop. So sub drop refers to what the submissive experience is, and top drop could refer to what I, as the top or the dominant, might experience after a session. So there's like that high, this natural kind of endorphin high, and like, whoa, this was like such a cool experience. I can't believe I did it. This was so great. Like, wow, I feel, I see myself in a different light. Like all these things could happen. And then that could last for a couple of days or even a week. And then there's like a come down. So kind of a sub drop. And that is because there's, those endorphins recede. But also what can happen is someone might start telling themselves like, oh my God, that was so stupid. I shouldn't have done that. Kind of like what I also like to call a vulnerability hangover. I'm turning my phone off. Sorry.
That's okay.
There we go.
You potentially have two things going on there, don't you? You have like the combination of like that dopamine drop. And then also, like you say, it's the vulnerability of any emotions that are in there. So yeah, I could see how that might happen. Sorry, just rewind tiny bit. You mentioned sub and top, and I got a little bit lost with whether we were sub or top in that respect. Could you just double click on that?
So the dominant, so myself in that scenario, would be the top. And then the sub is the submissive or the bottom.
So in this hypothetical example, let's say it's a woman who is going to be the sub. Has she got a partner? And are you the third person, or are you the second person? I'm just trying to practically work that out.
Yeah. So far in my experience, it's only been the two of us.
Okay.
Myself as the dominant and one other person as the submissive, and we're the only two people in the room.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there was a situation where somebody wanted their partner there with them to maybe just observe or participate in some way, that can certainly be that can be done. But just to clarify, usually there isn't anything sexual going on. Like I stay clothed the entire time.
You say usually. Does it?
Well,
is sometimes.
I can't speak for their dominance and what they do. So everyone has their own kind of way of doing things. I will say that I mean, that's another common assumption, is that it's about sex. And it can be if somebody wants it to be. I mean, for me, I feel like as the dominant, if I were to engage sexually with someone, I'm not going to censor myself here. Is that okay?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
And I mean, we can establish some safe words also if this gets like too much and you're like, oh my God, don't talk about that.
Safe words for me?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. I love this. No, I'll just tell you. No, just go hell for leather.
Okay. Okay.
Spotify can handle it.
Yeah. Well, if you're like, whoa, just say red. And if it's getting like, I'm not sure, you can say yellow. Yellow means pause, slow down. Red means stop.
Okay.
And you can say green. Green means like, fuck yeah, let's do this.
Yeah. Okay, green. Let's go.
Okay. Okay, so myself as the dominant, if I were to engage sexually with someone, like let's say I have a submissive male and we're having a session, like if I were to have intercourse with him, to me, that just like changes the entire power dynamic. To me, other dominatrixes might feel differently about this. I'm speaking only for myself.
Because you think that if it was a man, as soon as you engage in a sexual transaction, for want of a better term, then he becomes the dom. Is that what you're saying?
Or there's just too much of a equalization of the power.
Uh-huh.
To me, that's how I feel about it. Other dominatrices might not feel that way.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, when it comes to a male dominance and a female submissive, it's very often about sex in a traditional sense, intercourse and more penetrative kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, so there's a practice that's called queening, and there are actually like furniture made for queening. It's called a queening chair, and a queening chair kind of looks like a kind of like a potty seat.
Uh-huh.
And it's designed so that the submissive's face would be under the seat of the chair, and the seat of the chair has a hole in it, and so someone might sit on that naked without their bottoms on, at least, and then it would be like a forced oral on the submissive. Personally, I don't find that very appealing or erotic, but that's me. I can't speak for other people. I mean, obviously there are a lot of people that are into that because they make special furniture for it. So, whatever people want to do, that's fantastic. Me personally, I'm like, I don't know.
Very interesting. So, is what you do legal in all states, in all countries, just out of interest?
Such a good question. Short answer is no, not in all countries, even within the United States.
Not even North Korea?
I don't know. It depends on who's doing it. So in California, where I live, engaging in BDSM activities is legal. However, certain practices, if there's any exchange of body fluid, it becomes illegal. And if there's an exchange of money. So what people do in their private life, that's one thing. And I'll say more about that in a second, but what people do in their private life is their thing. If there's an exchange of money, if it's a BDSM session where there's, bondage or impact, which can be like spanking play or flogging, as far as I know, that's totally normal. Totally legal. When it comes to any kind of exchange of body fluid or penetration, then it's illegal. So, and that even goes as far as like foot worship. So if I have
foot
foot worship.
Foot worship.
Foot worship.
Okay. Yeah. I thought you said footwear show.
Foot worship.
Foot worship. Okay.
Yeah. So if I have a stiletto on or a boot, and I tell someone to lick my boot, totally fine. If I have a bare foot and I tell someone to worship my feet with their tongue, illegal, because there's now someone's saliva on my toe, and that's considered exchange of body fluid.
Right. Okay.
So
what could he? What if he licked your shoulder or yeah? Illegal. Okay. All right. So it's any saliva. It doesn't have to be toes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting.
So, like people who are into they call it water sports, which is like golden showers or peeing on someone or, whatever you might want to do with that urine, considered illegal. Yeah.
Okay.
It's body fluid.
The key is, you can see I'm blushing now. I'm not trying to make fun of your profession. This is just my, yeah.
Please ask anything. So one thing I want to say about that also is, in the United States, in certain states, you can't consent to assault and battery. And so even if you agree, you consent to someone, tying you up and flogging you, that's still illegal, even if you consent to it in certain states in the US. So people have to be very careful about what they engage in and understand the law, just as a safety measure. So it can get complex for sure.
Yeah. Do you think there's a point at which a kink becomes a red flag?
If it's non-consensual, for sure. If it is getting in the way of someone's health, either their mental health or physical health. For example, like if someone is engaging in consensual activity, however, it is really, to the detriment of their work. Like they're spending all their time, obsessing about finding like the perfect leather outfit, for example, or looking at certain kind of images online or something like that, then sure, it can be a red flag or a problem.
So if they are functioning in society, then potentially not. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it opens up a kind of a bigger conversation around consent, because one thing I've learned in my training is that it's called the 6 principles of sexual health. And interestingly, it was actually it designed by the World Health Organization, which I find kind of interesting because there's a lot of contradiction there.
Yeah.
But so the 6 principles of sexual health, let's see if I can get them all. Consent, non-exploitative, honesty, shared values, not exposed to STIs or unwanted pregnancy, and oh my gosh, honesty. I had them all in my mind, and it was like that one just like flew away. Okay, come back.
Podcasts do that too.
Yeah. So there's consent, which is of course paramount. Like it all starts there. That's the foundation. However, if someone isn't being honest about their intentions, then it could be considered not healthy. If somebody is exploiting another person, then obviously not healthy. There could be consent, but is that person of sound mind and body to actually give consent? Are they of age to give consent? So consent is certainly kind of a foundational marker of something being healthy or not healthy when it comes to kink or any sexual practices or intimacy. But there are other factors.
Where does you mention so your class is a sex coach and a dominatrix, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What point do those two things interchange? Is there any crossover? Are they sort of totally separate?
Yeah, there's a little crossover. The way that I have set up my practice is for there to be crossover, because I want to be able to, on the one hand, educate people who are curious and want to learn about it and start incorporating it into their life. And then people who come to me as maybe they started off as a dominatrix client, and then they want to kind of explore more aspects of their sexuality, or their dating life. So it can depend on the client, what they are looking for, if they need more of one or the other or want more of one or the other. And they certainly don't have to necessarily be combined. But for me, when I became a pro dom and then, started having sessions with people, I was like, wow, there's like so much more I want to do. And there's so much more potential here. And as someone who was curious about BDSM, but I didn't know where to start. And then once I did, how healing it was for me, I just thought like, wow, I think more people could really benefit from this. Not everybody, I'm not saying everyone's kinky and everyone needs to do this. That's not what I'm saying at all. But people who are curious and interested, having, giving them an opportunity to learn how to practice safely. And that they have, like, one thing I've seen is people who are new and submissive, they meet people online or in different places, and they'll meet someone who's like, I'm a dominant and this is what this means. And that's submissive, not knowing any different and not wanting to be rejected or look stupid in front of someone. They're like, oh, okay. They kind of go along with it. And it's like, that's how people get hurt, physically or psychologically. And for me, it's really important for submissives to understand that they have just as much say in how a session goes as the dominant does, whether it's a professional session or in their private life. Like, they do not have to submit to anything that they don't actually want to do or feel is right for them. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around what a dominance role actually is and what a submissive's role is, and how much say a submissive has and how much care and respect a real dominant should have for their submissive. Again, whether it's professional or in their personal life.
You mentioned that this healing for you. Presumably this is when you are professionally practicing as a dominatrix.
It's all of the above.
So you also practice being the sub, is that correct?
Only in my
personal life. Yeah. Okay. And what is it? What is it that's healing for you when you're in your professional work?
It feels really satisfying and gratifying to create a space where someone feels completely accepted and seen and cared for. Like, there's a level of human connection that I find really like soul nourishing on a level that I don't often experience in other aspects of my life.
So it's the intimacy.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Why? Because in those moments in a session, we are two people, myself as the dominant and my submissive, who are completely real. Like, there's no masks, there's no reason to pretend, there's no reason to hide our true feelings. And the fact that it's such a deep, I mean, not always, I've had some sessions that were just like, that was fine. So it's not always, but to have such a connection with someone that isn't sexual nor romantic, it's just human, is very unique in our culture. And to me, I feel like it opens something inside me that's like, wow, there's so much possible for human connection. There's so much there's so many other ways to see things and to experience life, than like, this is how you are with your friends. This is how you are in romance. This is how you are with your siblings. This is how you are with your family. And it can be sort of superficial, or like the ways that we have to engage in the world sometimes to, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but like, oh, we can't say that with that person.
Yeah.
Can't do that with that person. Kind of have to hold back this or that with, certain people who may not understand. But in the dungeon, it's like, wow, this is like our safe little wild playground. And because we have set up boundaries and have set up how, kind of loosely how the session's going to go, it actually is a lot of freedom in that. And so it's like, okay, well, here are the guardrails. Let's see what happens. So there's a freedom in that. And yeah, it's like being a kid again and, playing pretend, playing imagination in some like wild space. And yeah, just being able to be free and be like truly authentic and give that experience to another person
And
myself.
And so, and besides that connection, why is it that you think you've come to this point, and why does it mean so much to you? Why do you think that is?
I've always been someone who's like, for as long as I can remember, curious about people and curious about sexuality, curious about relationships. And in my early 20s, really, well, like 19, 20, I had a boyfriend who, like, we were both equally curious. And so it was really fun. Like, we had a lot of fun. And he was the first person that I was really sexual with. And so I was like, oh, this is how it always is. And then, time went on, we broke up, and I dated other people, and it was like, oh, this is not how it is. And I felt like, maybe because I'm, a woman of a certain age who was raised in a culture where at least the message I got was like, I was supposed to be sort of, I don't know if subservient is the right word, but kind of like go along with whatever my partner wanted. As the woman, I wasn't supposed to really take charge or say what I wanted. And so like I had a lot of like not great experiences with people, and I couldn't understand why they didn't know, like they were supposed to read my mind or something. I mean, I was young at the time too, but then as I got older, it just felt like, I think something might be wrong with me. Like, I'm not supposed to enjoy sex, or I'm not supposed to have a sex drive, or I'm not supposed to.
How old were you when
I
you
don't know,
thought this?
like early 30s, like probably most of my 30s, I felt that way. And then, at 40, it was kind of like, well, I don't know. I'm older now, like, who cares? But still just had my own kind of like hold back and uncertainties. And then once I started exploring kink and BDSM from a kind of like more educational perspective, or like really diving into it from a place of like wanting to learn about it. Like, I want to learn the foundations of it. I want to learn the history. I want to learn, where all this comes from. And then it was like, oh, there's a name for people like me. We're kinky. And that's actually totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Being kinky does not mean you're a sex addict. It does not mean you're a deviant. It does not mean you're, like we started the conversation with, like, you're broken in some way or you're whatever. It doesn't mean anything bad or shameful. It just means that you're someone who is curious, adventurous. There's actually some research around people who are kinky are like more sensation seeking generally in life. There are people who might engage in like bungee jumping and skydiving and like driving too fast or whatever. Just like there's this novelty and this sensation seeking that they generally have in life.
Mm.
And so it was like, okay, wow, I now have the language and the information and the education to understand myself. And so I don't enter into relationships just hoping and praying and keeping my fingers crossed that this person will be into the same things that I am, or I'll be able to talk to them about things, about, sexuality. I now can go into a relationship with like, okay, these are my must-haves, nice-to-haves, whatever. But like, I can't be with someone who isn't equally as open-minded as I am. And that doesn't mean they have to do everything that I want to do, but there's like a common ground that we have to start from. So being able to now understand that and reflect on how many years I felt like something was wrong with me and how that impacted so many areas of my life, not just romance and, in the bedroom. It was just like this kind of like fundamental, like, why am I like this feeling?
And
yeah.
can I just hover over that one for a minute? So you mentioned about, why am I like this? How were you? Is this like, you had this need for sort of dominance in the bedroom or anything? How did that show up practically?
Not necessarily, although not necessarily that, but just more openness and playfulness and
you were more open.
Yeah.
And it was those characteristics that you thought were abnormal and felt like you were broken. Am I getting that right?
Well, and it was just more about being open about enjoying pleasure, being open about enjoying sex, and probably having a little bit more of a higher libido than some of the people that I met anyway, and being judged for that and being like shamed for my natural self. And it was like, oh, well, if this person that I love and want to have a relationship with is telling me that, then maybe there is something wrong. And then, I mean, also like the kind of messages that we get in our culture, like some of the tests that in the US anyway, that somebody might take if they feel like they might have sex addiction are pretty harsh. Like the guidelines are like, what? Like, some of the questions are like, do you sometimes use sex to change how you feel? Like if you're stressed or in a bad mood, it's like, well, yeah. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be bad? If you have more than like one orgasm a day, that's could be considered a problem. And it's like, wow, who made that rule?
Yeah. I would put my own stamp on that, and I would say that it depends if you're completely draining the tank.
Or if it's getting in the way of your job, if it's getting in the way of your relationship, if it's getting in the way of, going to the gym, other things in your life that you're really committed to, that you have, values around health and fitness and values around, doing well at work, being a stand-up person in your family. Those are like very strong values for someone, and it's, you know, their sex life, however they're exploring their sexuality is getting in the way of that, then they might need to take some time to be like, okay, I need to kind of reorganize my priorities here. But to go so quickly to like a diagnosis and a pathology is not helping anyone.
Yeah, see, I feel like if you're over the age of maybe like 35 or 40 and you're having to go to the bathroom for a wank, and because your libido is that high, I want to know what you're taking and what your diet is, because like a high libido is healthy, isn't it? And this is something that I don't mind saying I've sort of leaned into somewhat as I've gained a bit more wisdom and started understanding my masculinity a bit more. And I think, like you say, so much of you know, growing up in certainly cultures that, you know, have like, you know, we've got like a lot of as you do, Irish culture, which is Catholicism and stuff, and there's a lot of shame around, you know, sex and stuff like that. And even like the discussion around like toxic masculinity and stuff. And obviously, I'm taking this down a slightly male perspective, or a very male perspective, but like I used to think that having like certain sexual urges was like unhealthy, and I felt that I needed to be like sanitized, you know, in order to, you know, not come across like this like chauvinistic male, like you know. And what I realized is, and I think where can't remember where I sort of started going down this rabbit hole. I think it started with just like health and fitness and like testosterone and stuff, and then kind of paying attention to like how I feel in certain things, and like how like libido and testosterone, how these things to talk to one another. I'm realizing that if if I'm like sat down somewhere in a bar or something, a girl calls past, and I go like, oh fucking hell, that's not only is that normal, but it's healthy. And those, you know, and again, this is, I mean, a potentially male and female conversation, but this is just my experience as a male. It's like true masculinity is like having that drive and that power and that fire, but having it under control. And sorry for the tangent, but I can't remember why I started talking about that. Oh yeah, we were talking about like these people that to go for a wank during the work hours and stuff. So, like, yeah, I don't think that's pathological. Pathological? Is that correct? Pathological per se. But yeah, if it's ruining your life, and it's like any addiction, isn't it? Like, but having said that, sorry, now I'm like going back. When you mentioned, you know, one of the definitions being, are you using sex when you are to change your state, if you're in a negative state? Obviously, if you included sort of alcohol with that, and so, you know, are you drinking alcohol to get you out of a negative state? Then, of course, that is where issues can start. But many people do that as well. But for many people, it doesn't turn into an addiction. But I like vomited quite a lot on the conversation there.
No, it's
How
great.
do you feel about that? All that?
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I agree with you. And I do feel like this whole conversation around, toxic masculinity is most men are not like this exaggerated caricature of whatever toxic masculinity is supposed to mean. They're just not. I talk to men all the time, and the number of men that I have spoken to, like, I wish I could record our conversations and share them with people, and especially people who think like, oh, men are this and men are that, and they shouldn't do this and they shouldn't do that, and guys who lift weights and eat meat are la la la. It's like, no, we can't generalize all people by the things that they do outwardly, first of all. But I'm not on board with this conversation at all about men should be different and, having high testosterone and whatever that might mean is not toxic masculinity. Like the example that you shared about, you're out somewhere and you see an attractive woman walk by and you're like, wow, yes, it's normal. Now, if you were like, hey, sweetheart, nice ass, why don't you get over here and sit on my lap?
Exactly.
Like, okay, that's over the line. Like, we don't do that. We don't talk to people like that.
Precisely.
But those are two vastly different experiences. I think we can all agree. You're just like, I shouldn't talk to men. Like, wow, honey, nice wallet. Why don't you empty that cash into my purse over here? Or like, like whatever kind of toxic femininity traits I might display. Like there's a common respect and common decency that we have for each other. And nature's nature. Hate to break it to you.
Yeah, for sure. And and that's obviously not it's not considering the reason that there has been this movement or counter movement in terms of toxic masculinity, because as you say, there is some of it out there. But I think, unfortunately, you got to remember that it's like 0.001% of males that may act in that way, or go further and do something that's illegal. And just because someone is showing sort of masculinity in a how can I say it, like an energetic sense, does not mean that they're someone that's unsafe.
Is there anything that you have questions about personally, if you're willing to share those or ask?
Oh, do I have any questions? Do I have anything that I would like to ask about how it relates to sexuality or anything like that? Is that what you mean?
Or for yourself, yeah. Any curiosities that you have as it relates to my work or you personally?
In relating to me, honestly, I don't think so. I mean, we mentioned this, so we spoke about this briefly on our first call, and I said, yeah, I'm just like, I've always been like pretty vanilla, high sex drive, but pretty vanilla. Yeah, it's just not something that's ever appealed to me. Who knows? Maybe my resistance to it, I don't even know if it is resistance, but I suppose, like, if I'm speaking to a girl and she's like, oh, like I'm into this, I want to be dominated and stuff. I'm kind of like, you know, maybe that's something I need to work on in myself. I suppose, like, I think it's important for someone to feel safe in a relationship. I think that is like, you know, a high priority for me. So I think I'm just highly conscientious around anything like that. So it kind of just like I'm just a bit like, oh, we'll go down that route. And sometimes like, you know, I see it in like trends in like pornography and like conversations that I've had with other lads before, and there's this shift towards like choking and spitting in mouths and stuff, and I don't know, it just kind of makes me uncomfortable because, well, it's just, yeah, I suppose, yeah, yeah, it just does. Maybe I'm a bit traditional like that, but like I've heard like lads saying, "Oh yeah, I was fucking her, and I was spitting in her mouth and that," and like I find it strange how what they're getting out of it. Does that make sense? Like as the guy, I find that more disturbing because it's almost like I don't know, like it's tapping into something like primitive and kind of like really like seems to me like kind of horrible and you know, it's literally defiling people. So yeah, I suppose for that, for me, like kind of like screams trauma. Not, you know, not that there's any judgment there, but yeah, does any of that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I think that hearing you say that brings up something for me too, which is I think when people hear kink or BDSM, they, because of the way it's portrayed in porn and also in mainstream media, it's like I see things on in a movie or shows and I'm like, oh my God, like that's not right. That's not okay. Um, Not to say that rough sex and spitting in someone's mouth is wrong. If that's what they both agree that they want and they like, then okay, sure. Um, yeah. So I think it just comes back to hopefully people having a conversation beforehand and agreeing on certain boundaries. And especially if there's going to be like something like choking or rough sex or spitting, like, is everyone okay with that? Do we have a safe word if we're going to choke each other? Because that can get out of control. So to me, it's really a question about safety and boundaries, not necessarily what people decide to do within those boundaries. Um, and also if it's something that kind of like squicks you out or like it just doesn't appeal to you, like there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't mean like, that doesn't mean anything about you. That just means your
It's not,
template for
yeah.
eroticism is different than that person's. That's it. It's just different. Not good, bad, right, wrong, better, worse, any of that.
How do people correctly set boundaries and stay safe? Because like here in the UK, we're awfully sort of like shy when it comes to talking about sex and stuff. So I'd imagine like the conversation just doesn't really happen. And I suppose that's where potentially some issues can crop up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. I'm not on TikTok, but I started to because I felt like I should because it's like everyone's on TikTok. And I got on there for a little bit and I saw a few videos of people talking about choking or talking about BDSM. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so bad.
Mm.
Just like, it was so presumptuous. Like, this girl was like, yeah, do this to your girl and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, how do you know she wants that? You know, and for some guy, a young guy, probably seeing that, it's like, oh, this is what women want. And, you know, a lot of people of a certain age grew up watching porn. And so they think that's what sex is. And I mean, it can be, but it's, you know, it's not. You can't assume that somebody wants certain things. So how do you start the conversation? The first thing would be starting the conversation when you're both feeling connected and in a good mood. You don't want to have a conversation about sex, especially if you're going to introduce something new that could be, you don't know how the person's going to respond. Like, don't bring it up right before you're about to have sex, because that's a vulnerable time. And then it can be confusing, and someone might just agree because it's in the moment. And so that's not a good time to have the conversation. Having a conversation when you're doing something outside of the bedroom that's fun, you're both in a good mood, relaxed, and asking the person, you know, if there's something that you wanted to bring up, let's say, asking them like, hey, I wanted to talk about something around our sex life, and it's kind of hard for me to bring it up, but I just feel like I want to share it with you. And it's not to criticize you or make our sex life wrong. It's just to enhance it. I like being with you. I enjoy what we do. I enjoy this about our relationship. And I want to maybe try something like this, whatever it is. And the person might respond with, like, you know, excitement and enthusiasm. You don't ever know. Or they might be like, whoa, what do you mean? You know, let's talk about that. So setting the groundwork by being in a good space, both of you, is a good start. But it's always going to feel awkward, probably. It's always going to be a little nerve-wracking, totally normal. I think sometimes when people approach a conversation and they feel scared, they assume that it means that they're wrong or they shouldn't do it. And it's totally normal to feel nervous about it. So set and setting, starting slow. You could even establish safe words for the conversation or safe signals. You know, if the conversation starts feeling a little bit intense, you could like hold up a peace sign or like yellow, red. You know, you can use the stoplight system too to slow things down. People might need time to process a conversation. I think it's always good to have a coach or a therapist possibly helping to kind of referee a conversation if necessary, or to help just facilitate a more open, easy conversation. Because again, I think it goes back to this kind of assumption that anything that's perceived outside of this kind of heteronormative, monogamous ideal, which is, by the way, fine. If people feel that way, they're like, I'm 100% heterosexual. I want a monogamous relationship. I want to get married and have my one partner for as long as my life is, and I want to have kids. That's wonderful. That's fantastic. Both people are on the same page. Like, amazing. That's beautiful. So I certainly don't want to, you know, I certainly don't want to come across as saying like, oh, everyone's kinky, everybody's polyamorous, this is the way everyone should be. Not at all. The point is that we should have a choice and not have things that seem to be non-normative or alternative be automatically considered wrong, disgusting, bad, pathological, whatever. So as it relates to a conversation that two people might have, the person, you know, your partner that you're talking to, who knows where they're coming from and what kind of exposure they've had to certain things, or kind of like stigma that they might have towards certain things, which is also totally fine. It just takes time. So, having a conversation with someone, with your partner, it could take multiple conversations over time, just so that both people feel comfortable and, both people are having their needs met, not agreeing to things just because. But it really comes down to communication. I mean, that's one thing that I see a lot too, is I'll talk to someone and they're saying, I want to do this with my partner, but I try to bring it up. And I know that she's thinking this, or I know that she's going to say this if I do this. And I'm like, well, how do you know for sure? Do you know for sure? It could be in the way that things are brought up. So yeah, it comes down a lot to don't make assumptions and be willing to have multiple conversations about things. Take it slow. If you need to take a break from conversations, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there, are you in a relationship?
I'm not.
Do you find, how does that conversation go when you speak about your work and if you're ever dating, or how's that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Because I haven't really dated much. Like, I've just been really busy with work and doing a ton of trainings, whatever. And so, yeah, it's been really interesting because I find that some people, so like I was on a dating app recently, and I would, match with people and I would tell them right away, like, hey, this is what I do for work. And I'm not looking for clients. Like, I want to date people, but I think you should know because I know it can be a lot for people. And I've had people be like, oh, thanks for telling me. That's a bit much for me. Sorry, best of luck. I'm like, oh, okay. So, but I'd rather be upfront about it and not have someone, get excited and we're like on a date at a nice restaurant and they're like, oh, I can't, I get it. That's fine. And then I've also met people who are like, oh my God, tell me more. This is amazing. Yeah. And it kind of has brought a lot out of people that I don't know that they would have told me on a first date. Like I went on a first date with someone. He was a really nice, accomplished, great person. And he told me that he frequently went to Asian massage parlors and got happy endings. And I was like, huh, like, I don't have any judgment about that. But if he was my partner, I don't know. I don't want that. I don't want that in my relationship.
Also, he was saying, was he saying that he would want to continue to do that, or was it just you were just kind of like, a bit of a red flag for me? You don't want some guy that's getting wanked off.
Yeah, it was just a turn off. And I mean, I don't know, maybe it sounded like it was something that he really enjoyed doing. And he did say that when he's in a relationship, he doesn't do it as much.
Okay. Yeah, but
I was just like, I don't know.
It's not like, he'd been once in 5 years and just was like, oh, happy ending, that was fun, but I shouldn't be doing that all the time because it's basically prostitution.
Yeah, because it was like, oh, there's this place on 4th Street and there was this place on da-da-da, and then I was like, oh, huh. But I had the thought in my mind of like, I wonder if he would tell me that on a first date if I was an attorney or, did marketing for a company or, whatever my job might be.
Yeah.
Some other professional job.
Yeah, I suppose the advantage you have is that being so open about that side of yourself, you're going to see hopefully more about that person and be able to pick up on any, we're always using the term red flags these days, but pick up on any red flags for yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like, I don't have any judgment about that. If that's how someone wants to express their sexuality, like, I have nothing to say
Mm.
about it. I honestly think it should be more, um I think our society should be more open about I don't even like the word prostitution, but just, like, having a transactional relationship around sex. Like, if we're all adults and it's consensual and that's what people wanna do, like, certain countries
And
it's decriminalized and, um, it's it's I can't think of the word, but, like, managed in a way where it's not impacting society in a negative
uh,
way. When it's decriminalized or legalized, then the control of, like, sex trafficking, like, that doesn't
sure.
happen as much. So, I think there
Yeah.
are definitely good reasons for that, but again, it's just I don't know that I want my partner engaging
Yeah.
in that often, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Are there
Yeah.
any times where you felt unsafe in your work?
Uh, Not very often. I I'm pretty strict about how I vet people. So someone has to fill out an application from my website. I have a separate website for my dom business
Mhm.
and my coaching business. They're separate. Um, but from my dominatrix website, someone has to fill out an application. So they have to tell me about themselves and they have to do it in a way that's thoughtful. Like if they give me one word answers, I'm not going to respond to that person. And they also have to give me a reference of someone that they've seen before, and or send me a picture of them holding their driver's license so I can see their name, that their license
Mhm.
matches their face. And if people are willing to do that, then I know that they're like that's 90% of it. That for me to feel like I'm playing with a safe person. So they have to do that first, and then I read their application, and then we have a phone call. And it's just a way for them to ask me any questions that they want to ask, and for me to get a feel for them and make sure that we're a good fit. Because I don't, I have my own hard limits of things I don't want to do in sessions. So if that's what they're looking for, it's like, well, we're not a good fit, and that's fine. Um, so because I have these boundaries and kind of like some hoops for them to jump through, um, I I've never ended up in a room. I used to have a dungeon. I don't have it anymore, but I've never ended up in my space or any other space with someone that I was like, you know, felt unsafe physically or psychologically. So
Mm.
yeah.
Threesomes.
Yes.
Thoughts? I'm not going to actually conjure up a question. I'm just going to drop it in there. What do you think about threesomes? Should everyone try one once? Is it a red flag if someone wants to do one? Like,
I I don't think it's a red flag. I think if people are excited by the idea of it, then sure, why not? I The only time I would think it would be a red flag is if it were a Hail Mary to save a relationship. Like I've seen people want to open up their
okay,
relationship because they like the relationship might be clearly over, but they don't want it to be over. And so they think by opening the relationship up to other people, then it might save the relationship.
where they're just
So
desperate
in
and they're
that
like,
case,
oh, we'll do this.
it's a
We'll,
problem.
yeah. Mm,
Yeah. Not to say that it can't ever work. I mean, if someone's in a rocky chapter of their relationship and opening it up in a safe way with safe people, it might
mm.
be fine.
It seems
But
like there's
I
no
think
way
it's
that
playing with fire.
someone isn't getting shortchanged in that situation. I don't know.
Yeah. Have you had a
I
threesome? Can I ask
haven't.
that? You don't have
I
to answer that.
haven't. No. I don't think there's any guy out there who doesn't want to try, yeah, 2 women. Wow, amazing. Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's no, I haven't done it. But I certainly would never approach. I don't think it'd ever be a good idea if you're in a relationship. I don't know. Just seems like someone's going to get hurt. But who knows? But I'm probably coming from a slightly anxious attachment style, so maybe if you're more secure, that kind of thing would be okay. Don't know. Yeah, there's lots of issues to consider, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, there really isn't anything that's, kind of like hard and fast, always, never kind of rules around sexuality. It's so subjective and kind of contextual to the relationship, to the timing, to the people, to all kinds of things. Yeah. I think openness, honesty, curiosity, and being okay with yourself to the best of your ability. Being able to have like an inner stability and confidence, and don't believe everything your mind tells you about things. I think those are skills that can help everybody in life, but especially when it comes to relationships and sex. Like, just be as cool with yourself as you possibly can. Know that your mind can tell you things when things don't go well that probably aren't true. Like, oh, you're such an idiot, you shouldn't have done. What were you thinking? Like, who does? Like, that's just your mind doing what it does. Like, to the best of your ability, if you can be like, okay, that's just what my mind is going to say right now, but I'm okay. It's,
Yeah, go watch that self-talk sometimes. Yeah, I catch myself doing it. So I'm like, you fucking dickhead. And and then I'm like, just like, yeah, don't speak to yourself that way. Okay, right, crack on. What are the funniest safe words that you've ever come across?
Jelly donut.
Is that like foot on the gas, or what's jelly donut? That's not jelly donut.
Yeah.
Interesting. See, it sounds so fun.
Right?
Jelly donut.
Yeah.
Let's fucking go. See, I'd be no good at this because I'm like, what? Which one was it? Like, you should see me. Yeah, at the gym sometimes we're doing these classes. I'm like, are we running? Are we rowing? I'm like, oh, I don't fucking know. Dyslexia in the bedroom could cause some issues. So maybe traffic light system. Oh dear.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go.
I feel like, I don't know why, but I don't know whether it would be. I'm sure I've heard Geronimo was one.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. That seems like a go word.
What was it from? I'm sure it was something to do with. I'm sure there's a rumor about some celebrity like back in like the noughties, and it was it was like one of these things where he liked a gerbil or a hamster up his bum. That's a weird one, isn't it? Sorry, I know you won't say it's weird, and there's no judgment. But it is non-normative. Is that the word?
I have my
Go
own
on.
feelings about that. One, the gerbil
Yes,
can't
the per
consent,
gerbil.
and that just doesn't seem healthy to have open wounds in your
Yeah. Is it like?
rectum.
Is it a
Like,
thing? Or is it just like a meme?
I've never met anyone that's into that, and it just seems really unhealthy. Like, it seems like the kind of thing that someone might do one time and then not be able to even do it again because there's just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem
Maybe there's some
healthy.
content in there if they ever do Hangover 4.
Yeah.
Do you know what? One thing that we never really covered was, and this is what I said to you on the phone, is what I didn't want to happen, is you were speaking to me about just like the main reason why people do BDSM, and around that freedom, and they might be in a high stress job. Just say a little bit about that, because I don't think we've really covered that too much, and I think it's a really important part of this.
Yeah. So why somebody might participate in BDSM?
What are the most common reasons, non-traumatic reasons, where people see BDSM as a respite?
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope that through our conversation, I didn't paint the picture that people who participate in BDSM always have some kind of
100%
trauma.
not. You didn't. No, you didn't. You didn't.
Okay. Yeah. There's an aspect to the dom sub dynamic for the submissive or sub to surrender control. And the benefits of doing that are not having to make any decisions, being completely at the service of the dominant, being able to completely just shut their mind off and be in the moment, kind of the anticipation and not knowing where it's going to go, and the high sensation of all of it, being in the presence of a dominant woman who is watching your every move and isn't going to let you get away with one thing, is like exciting and terrifying at the same time. But you're safe. It's kind of like going into a haunted house or riding on a roller coaster. It's like, holy shit, this is terrifying. And the ride is going to end. The session's going to end. So it's a really amazing way to completely immerse oneself in a completely surprising, scary, fun, erotic, albeit not necessarily sexual, but erotic experience. And so, yeah, the freedom of not having to make any decisions, the excitement of having a woman paying so much attention to you and approving of you, if not actually enjoying and liking you because of these proclivities, not in spite of them. Do you know what I mean? It's like she's on board. Like, hell yeah, I'll tie you up and
Does she have to
torture
like
you
you?
and make you fall. I think so.
So
At least have respect for sure. That's a recipe for disaster. If I, and that's a common misconception, is that myself as a dominant that I hate men and I'm taking my hate for men out on my client. Not true at all. If that were the case, like that's a recipe for abuse and some problems for sure. So, like, maybe not, but definitely have respect for.
Yeah. Right. Awesome. Where would you like to direct anyone who's listening if they're interested? Yeah, chance to do a little bit of a plug and all that stuff.
Yeah. My website is Eros for Everybody, EROS for
Is
everybody.com.
that a number 4 or?
And FOR, the word for. So EROSFOR everybody.
I don't know why I thought it was a number 4. Sorry, I interrupted you. Continue, please.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, some people think that, but
I think it's the way you say 4. Like you have there's like 4. Like it sounds like yeah. I don't know. It sounds like yeah. Sorry. I'm glad we cleared that up.
Yeah. All words, erosforeverybody.com. My Instagram is at eros_FOR_everybody. You can follow me on Instagram, and yeah, that's where people can find me.
And what can we expect from you in the next few years? Have you got anything sort of big planned? Is it sort of continuing to as you are? Like,
I want to. So what I'm working on right now is creating a membership site, a membership community. I think I'm going to call it the Kinky AF support group. I might change the name. I'm not that worried about it right now, but essentially I want it to be a community where people can meet other kinky people, not necessarily like a dating thing, but
who knows? Yeah.
Sure. If people meet in the community, that's great. But I just want it to be a safe place where people can get information, where newbies can come and ask all the questions and not be intimidated. We might have a book club. I might have like a Monday kind of like visioning meditation group. So my vision is that the activities are not necessarily just going to be about kink, but it's going to be a place where people can feel safe talking about their kink with other kinky people if they so choose, but just not having that barrier or any feelings of having to hide or feelings of shame about their kinky selves. So that's what I'm working on right now, is the membership site. I would love to do not necessarily retreats, but like weekend workshops in other places. So like I absolutely love Marbella, Spain, and I want to like live there part-time. So I'd love to have workshops there. I'd love to have workshops in other places. I don't, like I said, I don't know if I necessarily want to run retreats, but if I were a guest in a couples retreat to teach about communication, kink, and BDSM, or one of those things, then I would love to do that. Yeah, but just really being someone who makes kink and BDSM accessible for people who are curious about it, and be a voice of neutrality and just like a safe space where people can learn and bring a new perspective to it. Because I think I'm unique in that I don't look like your typical or stereotypical like kinky person or dominatrix. You know, like a lot of people expect like a lot of tattoos and black hair and lots of piercings, and I look like a mom. So yeah, so just helping to
normalize it, I guess.
Yeah, destigmatize it and demystify it for people, de-shame it,
Amazing. Yeah. And I mean, I think from what I know about you so far, it looks like you're on the right track, and you do yeah, I can see you doing really well, and I hope that you continue to grow and everything works out for you. I appreciate you shedding some light on an area which is so alien to me, and hopefully this spreads your message a little bit further, and it can help some people out if that's something that they're looking to do. So thank you again, and I'm sure we will keep in touch. And yeah, I hope you
Yeah.
have a great day, Julia.
Thanks. You too. Thanks for having me as a guest. It's been an honor and a real pleasure. It's been super
All
fun
right.
talking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.